What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a massive day for Tesla, for the markets, for the entire economy, as Jerome Powell himself is going to be speaking. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the data affecting the markets in Tesla and what I do anticipate to happen in the markets going into the big speech by Jerome Powell. Before I break anything down about this, though, before I get into any more details about anything, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus free level 2 data with $0 in commissions for trading. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 8 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So guys, I actually recorded this entire video just like half an hour ago. I tried to download it and it would not let me download, so I have to re-record everything, and that's why this might seem a little bit different. I may kind of rush through it, but I need to get this done as fast as possible, and I want to help as many people when doing so. So anyways, Tesla's up 2.52% for the day. It ended up outperforming the market as I predicted, and the overall price action was very similar to what I thought. Tesla was basically right here yesterday. I thought Tesla would actually kind of come down for the first hour or so, then get a really nice bounce and end up closing a little bit green and actually outperforming the market. Instead, we actually gapped up, and then we did come down to turn a little bit red for the day. And then we got an immediate bounce showing some really nice strength before this thing basically chopped back and forth for the entire day. And we ended up actually closing once again up over 2%, outperforming the entire market. Now, even though this is very awesome, I think the entire market did see some very similar trends trading back and forth. That's because the big guy, Jerome Powell, is going to be talking tomorrow, and the market is just getting ready for what he's about to say. He's going to be speaking tomorrow at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time. That's almost 1 p.m. He's going to be answering lots of major questions, and also he's going to be saying some big things about monetary policy, in my opinion. Now, what he says is going to move the entire market, in my opinion, especially Tesla. I also believe that it doesn't matter how awesome a stock is fundamentally. I think that a stock is likely going to be affected big time by what he says. And whether or not this rally in the market continues is going to depend on what he says. There's a chance the market's going to keep on pumping, the market's going to keep going up. There's also a chance the market's going to reverse because of what he says, and that's why you have to be prepared for it. I also want to note something else that's important. We have more Fed speakers coming out for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and etc. And this is important because when the Fed speakers come out, the market tends to not perform as well. We tend to see more choppy price action, and also the market come down a bit depending on what they say. So please be prepared for that for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and also after Powell speaks, we have the Fed's bar speaking. So lots of Fed speakers this week. Also for Thursday, we also have jobless claims. And then on Tuesday of next Tuesday, we also have the CPI report coming out, which is going to be very, very important. One thing that's a little bit of a red flag today was I heard another Fed speaker actually speaking. I don't remember their name, but they basically said that the Fed is open to being more hawkish and raising the terminal rate even higher because of the strong jobs report. I do believe Powell is going to be asked about that. I do believe Powell is going to say some things about the jobs report, and that is going to affect how the entire market moves. So please be ready once again at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Be prepared. Now, on top of that, for earnings, we have Chipotle, we have Hertz coming out tomorrow, but that's not really that huge compared to Wednesday and Thursday. On Wednesday, after the market closes, we have Walt Disney, the one and only Disney, and also on Thursday, we have PayPal. That's going to be one of the biggest ones for the entire week. Earnings is not as big this week, but we do have some big names in there, so please be ready for that. Now, finally, let's talk about Tesla. What's happening to the stock? What did Elon Musk tweet about? To start off, Elon Musk did say something that's very awesome in my opinion. Basically, Tesla owner Silicon Valley tweeted that, "Hey Elon Musk, the red light bar looks 100 times better in my opinion." And I can't help but agree with that. That looks much better in my opinion. It looks very futuristic, very cool. And I think that the futuristic design will really help bring in more buyers for a car like this. Now, I also want to note, I mean, by car, I mean truck, but I want to note that a lot of people are going to buy it anyways, regardless of this, but I still think this is a very good feature and I really believe it's awesome. So, most people, most CEOs will maybe not even see a tweet like this, but Elon Musk, being very active on Twitter, actually responded and he actually said that production will have the red light bar. So, that's awesome news in my opinion. I'm not trying to exaggerate when I say this, but having a CEO that responds to news like this, that's incredible. And the fact that they're very willing to do this is also good news. It could bring in more buyers. Now, additionally, we actually saw Benzinga report that one of the Wedbush analysts is actually very bullish on Tesla. He said that he sees Tesla actually going not to 200, but to 225 for the near term. I believe that's very possible, but in order for that to happen, in order for Tesla to actually get to 225, it's going to depend on the overall market and what Powell says. Like I said before, fundamentals are important. They do affect how stocks move, but they are not everything. They're not everything because during these phases where the market moves in these cycles and the Fed starts to tighten their monetary policy, the overall contraction of the economy has negative effects on very big companies, negative effects on the collective market that could drag down some very strong stocks. So yes, I believe it's very possible for Tesla to not stop at 200 but actually get to 225, but that will depend on the Fed, their policies, and what Jerome Powell says tomorrow. Finally, we have some more good news for Tesla investors because when you look at the new Model Y levels, we're actually seeing them coming down from their inventories. That's a good sign because we're seeing demand increase. What was happening was demand was slowing down. You guys could see inventory was coming up like this. Demand was slowing down. Then the price cuts came and we saw this thing slowly come down, and it actually got faster and faster. And now inventory is very low. This means that demand is still relatively high for the Tesla Model Ys. And I consider that a good thing. Now, I also want to add the fact that the price cuts, yes, they're still there, but there were lots of articles that came out yesterday saying that, oh, the price cuts are actually not as big, the prices are going up. And that's actually not the truth because of the fact that when you look at the data, the price cuts are at about $13,000 for the Model Y. The increases are actually at about $2,000 in total. So that still is a cut of $11,000. And it still has a very positive effect on demand for Teslas. You could see it right over here in the data. Now, on top of that, I want to note that Tesla is still doing very well from a technical standpoint. We're still outperforming the market. We have a nice price price ratio continuing to climb, and Tesla is just doing so much better than both SPY and the QQQ. Now, could this last forever? The answer is not necessarily. And that's why you still have to be very careful because the Fed could come in and have a big effect on this rally. Elon Musk also said that. He did say that the Fed could actually really hurt the valuations of the entire stock market, including Tesla for the short term, but for the long term, things are still very bright. Many analysts are still very bullish. And once again, like I mentioned yesterday, almost 51% of the time we're green on Tuesdays. We tend to be green and we tend to have slow starts. We tend to see more volume pick up as the hours go on, specifically during the third and fifth hours. So just be ready for that. Even if Tesla's kind of slow in the beginning, it doesn't guarantee anything, but Februaries are only green about 38% of the time. So Februaries are historically not the best months for the markets as a whole and also for Tesla. Please be prepared for that. When it comes to short interest, this has been on a bit of an uptrend overall, but it did come down just a little bit relative to the last Thursday. So the data is telling us that we did see some shorts cover on Friday, and if this does get another uptick, there is a possibility that we might see more and more of shorts start to cover if Tesla does keep outperforming the market. But at the same time, the opposite could happen, and some of these shorts could come out on top if the market reverses. Now, from the dark pool data, short volume is going up, meaning that there has been more shorting on Tesla, and we are still seeing some profit taking from institutions. Be ready for this because they obviously do this to hedge and for risk management. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it could also be a sign that they know something, right? Not always guaranteed, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. They always, or it's very possible that they do know something about Jerome Powell or what the market's doing. So please be prepared just in case the market makes a U-turn. The volume is still good on Tesla. It still is showing signs of really, really nice strength. It looks like it's going to keep going. 185 million in volume is very close to 198, which is the average volume for the week. The best part about Tesla is the options chain because right now there's a very nice balance between puts and calls, in my opinion. See how the ratios are all very close to one? This is a good sign because if it's like skewed in one direction, then we tend to get an opposite effect. If everyone is buying puts on Tesla, Tesla is more likely to try to push up because the market makers are less likely to want to pay out those option premiums. And it's the same thing vice versa. If everyone's buying calls, if the put to call ratio is like way too low, then Tesla might not perform as well because too much calls or too many people in one direction tends to not be the best for a stock. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the market, and there's something you need to know. We do have a big divergence in the fear and greed index, and there are many indicators out there suggesting that the market is in a topping process. Once again, if you look at the fear and greed index, you will see that there's actually an uptrend in the index right here. The market's more greedy now than how greedy it was during the August rally. But the thing is, the price during the August rally is actually lower. I'm sorry, it's higher back then compared to now. So the greediness is much higher, but the price, the peak right now is a lot lower. That's not the best of signs, and this is actually indicating that the market might be peaking very soon. When we see greed at these extreme levels, the market tends to also peak. So please be very careful. I also want to note some other very important things about the stock market before I break down Tesla for you. There are some big red flags out there. And I do believe the market's in the topping process, like I mentioned in my previous videos. I think that there are two possibilities on SPY. One of them is the top is either at 418. This becomes a little bit more likely because of the fact that the MACD is starting to close a bit, and we are seeing the market very indecisive. But it's going to depend heavily on Powell. If we get one last rally, it's going to depend on Powell, or if the market collapses and starts coming down, it depends on Powell. In my opinion, it's almost 50-50 at this point. Either 418 was the top, or we might get one last pop before the market finds its final top, before we start to see the market reverse, whether it's because of CPI or whether it's because of Fed officials. In my opinion, even though it's almost 50-50, I am, in my opinion, kind of leaning a little bit more towards this being the top because of what some other pieces of data are telling us. But I just want to note, I don't know for sure. I can't promise anything about it. Why am I saying that this may have been the top, this 418 level, and the market is still set to maybe slow down a bit? I'm saying that because of some of the big pieces of data that are coming out, and also because of the fact that we're starting to see extreme levels from many different stocks. So for the QQQ, this thing is very indecisive. We do have a gap below. There's also a gap above. I do think we might push up a little bit to fill that gap, but I see very sideways action until Powell starts speaking. And I don't know if Powell's going to pump the markets or if he's going to cause everything to crash. It could go either way, but there is a gap below, so please be ready for that. We might come down to fill that gap, and it's going to depend heavily on Powell, whether we make a new top or if the top is already in. And then for other stocks out there like Google, we have very similar setups. Google did get a small pop after like a big piece of news, but not going to go into the full details about it. Google has this gap down here, so please be very careful. This could have a negative effect on the overall market. And I do believe we're going to just trade sideways tomorrow and we're going to pick a big move depending on Powell, but we're just going to have to wait and see. The same thing could be said about Apple. It's doing something very similar to last earnings where we got a big pop in the beginning before we ended up slowing down the next day. Finally, let's talk about the VIX and just a couple of other things before I end this video. On the VIX, on the daily, I am noticing that we have this falling wedge like pattern. We're still inside of it, but we are starting to respect a bit of an uptrend. There is also a gap on the VIX that actually formed right here. So in my opinion, oopsie daisies, in my opinion, it looks to me like the VIX is going to actually get a breakout relatively soon. I think it may take another week to get the real breakout, but it seems a little bit more likely because of how low the VIX has been for so long. The VIX is typically not downtrending for this long. It's kind of overdue. And I'm saying this because this could be a negative catalyst for the market. I'm not saying the VIX is determining what the market's going to do, but it's more like implied volatility for SPY needs to come up relatively soon. And when that happens, that tends to have a negative effect on the price, which could drag the market down. On top of that, I'm seeing that the 10-year Treasury yield is also starting to respect an uptrend after bouncing off some major support. If this thing does get the big break to the upside, this will be negative for the stock market. But there's also this gap right here. So it might come down to fill this gap. And if it does bounce after that and starts uptrending, that's going to be a bearish sign for the stock market because it has all these gaps up here. So that's just something to be very prepared for. But the biggest red flag I'm seeing right now in this rally is the dollar index. The dollar index has a tendency of respecting falling wedges. When this thing gets a breakout, this is typically when the market tops, and this tends to be inversely correlated with the stock market. This thing is starting to break out. We actually got confirmation of the breakout, and I'm thinking two possibilities. It either continues breaking out, or we have one last drop to retest the resistance. This used to be resistance, now this is like support, but this is actually going to maybe get a retest before continuing, or it might just keep going from here. If that's the case, that's going to be bearish for the stock market. So please be ready for that. I also want to know just some more examples on the weekly of this. We had other instances where it actually followed these trends. So for example, right here, hold on, right here, we actually had like a falling wedge like pattern right over here around that June phase as we got closer to June. And then this is near the time when the market, we ended up seeing the market downtrend during this time frame. Then remember the August rally that happened? I'm sure you guys remember that on the weekly. When the market was rallying in August of 2022, this thing was coming down very hard, and then this thing got a break to the upside, and that actually marked the top of the rally for SPY and etc. before the market started to downtrend. And then since October, the market has technically been on more of an uptrend because we're not at that low level, we're a lot higher, and you could see this thing's been dropping so hard, and we finally got the breakout, which is a bearish signal for the stock market. So anyways, the bottom line is I believe the market has been on a topping process, and I just don't know exactly whether we topped or not, if we're going to top. I also want to note that Tesla has been outperforming the market, and I don't really think Tesla's going to just like start crashing or anything like that. I want to break down what we're seeing from a technical standpoint. So right now, from a technical standpoint, Tesla looks bullish because of the fact that we do have a bullish triangle like setup. And I did mention to you guys that we have both bullish and bearish cases that could play out for Tesla. Let me explain. If you're a bull, if you think Tesla's going to go to the absolute moon, if you think the rally's not over and Tesla's going to keep going, that's very possible. Okay, but first we have to break some major resistance between this 198 to 200 level. If we break this, all right, if we actually do break it once we test it, remember it's very strong resistance. If we break it, I could see this thing flying all the way up to the 200 EMA on the daily, which would take this thing all the way up to about 215. And we could go higher, we could stop very close to that, or we could go higher depending on many macroeconomic factors, depending on the Fed and etc. But I do believe that that's a very important level to watch, that 198 to 200 level. The more bullish case would be us breaking above this because of Powell, because of the market, because of some good news for Tesla, for example, that causes Tesla to break 200 and get to 215. Now, a bearish case would be, for example, okay, if Tesla ends up coming down because of bad news, maybe Powell says something the market doesn't like and the whole market starts tanking, you have to first watch 189 to 190. I would say it's closer to the middle between there. And that's a very important level. Because if Tesla comes down to this level, we have to try to bounce off here, kind of like how we did today. If we break below 189, then I'm going to be watching 185, very close to that 185 range. And if you break below that, the very important demand zone is between 182.5 and then 180. Okay, So if you are a bear, if you think Tesla's going to come down and Powell's going to crash the markets, it's very likely that if the market does come that hard down, then you have to watch this demand zone on Tesla. We could end up retesting that. Okay, so please watch that very, very carefully. Now, I went over the bullish possibility and the bearish possibility, but what do I think is actually going to happen? My answer to that is I believe I can't really give you guys any promises because I don't know what Powell is going to say. If I was him, if I was in the Fed, I would be more hawkish and I would actually cause the market to tank. That's just my opinion. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm just saying. And I can't guarantee it because the last time the guy spoke, he actually caused the market to pump. And the market is very manipulated. They wanted the market to pump because of the excess puts that were out there, the amount of puts everyone was buying. But what the market did is they took a couple of words from Powell and they chose to continue the rally. So that's why it's so hard to predict. But I believe we're going to get a repeat, okay? A repeat of what we saw. I believe the market is going to trade kind of sideways like this. I think Tesla will either, if we gap up, look for resistance at 198 to 200. And if there's a gap like below that forms, we're likely going to come down to fill it. And then if we gap down into open, we're likely going to come all the way back down to maybe 190, get a bounce, and then fill the gap above. All right. So I expect sideways boring price action no matter which way we go. I think it's going to be a boring day into open. We're just going to push up, then come down, just go back and forth, just like this. I think that's how the day is going to start. And then we're going to make a big move after getting very tight. I think the market's going to be heavily dictated by Powell, what he ends up saying. And I think the entire market's going to move very similarly. Now, please note there could be interferences for Tesla depending on the news, and Tesla is more likely to outperform the market because there's so many buyers and so many people holding on to their shares. So I don't really think we're going to come crashing hard, like that hard, depending on what Powell says. But I do believe it just really depends on what comes out of his mouth. I can't predict that. So I do expect it to be very boring and sideways until, about 1 p.m. Eastern time, very close to that time. When Powell starts speaking, I think Tesla will either make a big move in the very beginning and then it might start to slow down, or if Powell pumps the market very hard, if he does, Tesla could actually break 200 and keep going. It is possible. It's unlikely, but it is possible. If Powell ends up causing the market to drop, I could see Tesla breaking below 190, maybe coming down to this 185 level. All right, so please be ready for it. Tesla has been outperforming the market. It still has some nice strength, so I don't expect it to crash too hard. But I just want you guys to be ready for what he ends up saying. Now, like I said before, we have more Fed speakers coming out later during the week, so that is a little bit suspicious. And we know when they speak, the market is more likely to slow down, become choppy, and maybe even come down a little bit. The Fed is not happy about the very strong reported jobs reports. I know the numbers are manipulated, so I don't even fully trust it, but that's what the data is telling us. And even if that's the case, the Fed does not like it. They need to cause the market to slow down to really bring down inflation. So please be ready for what Powell says. Like I said before, it's a little bit more likely the Fed's going to try to be hawkish this time, slow down the rally, but I can't guarantee it. We'll just have to wait and see. That's why tomorrow is such a big day. Thank you all for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Be ready for tomorrow. Huge day. Powell's going to say something very big. It will make the entire market move, especially Tesla. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still very bright. I'm still very bullish long-term. And peace out.